What celebrity did bad things, but everyone forgot what they did, because they're famous? Vince Neil of Motley Crue drove drunk and killed one of his very good friends and gave the two people in the other car very bad injuries and brain damage. He also had other DUIs after this. But hey, everybody loves a good party song, and now he has a famous liquor brand. Floyd Mayweather beats his wife with hands that are registered as lethal weapons in front of his children. But because he wins, nobody cares. Jimmy Superfly Snuka killed his girlfriend and got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Kurt Cobain's mother regularly goes on talk shows and interviews where she talks about how supportive she was of Kurt and how she knew how famous he would become from the moment she heard his music. Yep, it's the same mom that abused Kurt and kicked him out multiple times, making him live at his grandparents, friends, and sometimes, not confirmed, sleep under a bridge. R. Kelly married Aaliyah when she was 15 years old in the mid-90s, and yet it took like 2 decades for people to start boycotting him as a sexual predator. He was still making songs with Beyoncé and Lady Gaga, etc. for a long time. Rick James kidnapped 2 women with his wife while on separate crack binges. Vince Neil was driving drunk and caused the crash that killed his passenger. Ted Nugent shoot his pants to dodge the draft and has a song called Jailbait, which ends with him pleading with an officer not to arrest him and instead share a 13-year-old. Johnny Cash walked out on his wife and kids, saying that his career was more important to him than they were, then went on to eventually settle down with June Carter and start a whole new family while still ignoring the kids he already had. Boy George, he beat a guy with a metal chain after cuffing him to a radiator. Should make for an interesting sequence in his forthcoming biopic. Steven Tyler became the guardian for a 16-year-old he was dating when he was 25 so he could bring her on tour, knocked her up too. Piers Morgan was the editor of the Daily Mirror during the Iraq War, published photos that he knew were fake of American and British troops abusing Iraqi prisoners. He was fired, but somehow managed to make a successful media career out of it. George Wallace, the infamous pro-segregation governor of Alabama in the 60s, did not inform his wife that her doctor diagnosed her with cancer. Doctors during this time often told patients' relatives of their cancer diagnosis, instead of the patient, especially if the patient was female. The reason was that she was running for governor as a surrogate for him since he had reached his term limits, and he thought that the diagnosis would negatively affect her chances of winning. She ended up finding out about it 4 years later during a visit to a gynecologist, but unfortunately the cancer had progressed to the point that she died from it 3 years after learning that she had cancer and that her husband had known about it. He ended up successfully getting the term limits repealed and went on to serve a few more terms as governor. People forget about this, I'm assuming, because of all of the other shooty things he did. Jared Leto's been accused of sexually assault by half a dozen 13-15 years old girls. Karl Malone got a 13-year-old pregnant and refused to take care of that child. Drake seems to be ignored for grooming a young underage fan, at age 14, into being his girlfriend until she recently turned 18 this year. And now he's even, supposedly, doing it to a young actress. Salman Khan, a very famous Indian actor. Gwyneth Paltrow, she's a con artist and manages MLM, as well as recommending women treat their illness by putting rocks up their VJ and steaming their privates, causing harm to people. You can say she's an idiot, or just that she's a sociopath that loves making money off hurting other people. Steven Tyler was a serial sexually assaulter in the 70s and 80s. Now he's an old woman. Every time something like this is posted, no one cares about my comment on how Sean Kingston, the American Jamaican rapper, has sexually assaulted multiple women near where I live, and he's gotten away with it every time by threatening legal action. If anyone actually gives a shoot, I can link proof from a girl explaining what happened to her, but I will censor some things for her sake. Basically, he's doing rap shows and then Bill Cosbying girls in the area, or you can just look up on Google Sean Kingston sexual assault and many hits will come up. Frick you, Sean Kingston, your music's dog shoot. In my country there was a TV host that killed several people in a car accident. Twice. It was his fault both times. You can still see him on TV. I mean, it seems the most that Drake is actively grooming young girls, but it seems to be forgotten as soon as new evidence surfaces. Emma Roberts beat the shit out of her then-boyfriend Evan Peters, then continued to co-star in the same show as him. There's a soccer player in Brazil who killed his wife, quartered her body, and gave it to dogs eat. To make it harder to police found out. He went to jail for a few years and now he is paying again and making tons of money again like nothing happened. Creed Bratton has been a leader and a follower of numerous cults. There was that time James Franco tried to frick a teenager, after she posted the exchange on social media of her telling him how old she was and him not caring and still wanting to see her. All he had to do was go on a few morning talk shows a couple days later and say, "You don't always know who you're talking to online," and everyone instantly forgot about it. He framed it like he was the one who was deceived and people just let it slide even though that clearly wasn't the case. Jerry Seinfeld dated a 17-year-old girl in high school when he was 39 years old. Can we have a reverse thread? Which celebrity has a clean background? Charlie Sheen once had unprotected sex with his girlfriends, plural, when he has HIV. Andy Dong has sexually assaulted people an absurd amount of times and also got Phil Hartman's wife back into drugs, which led to her murdering Hartman in an intoxicated state. You would think he would have been ruined in the Me Too movement, but apparently we pass it off like, ha, that's classic Andy Dong. Mr. Mosby from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody killed someone in a drunk driving accident. Rick James. He and his girlfriend literally kidnapped someone and burned them with their crack pipe and sexually assisted her, but people just want to go Rick James-ish. Is no one gonna mention Caitlyn Jenner hitting that pregnant woman and forcing her into traffic? Then getting the Woman of the Year award? I guess I remembered that wrong. Turns out it was an elderly woman, and the woman died when she was hit by a Hummer. Also, remember that Brendan Schaub, the millionaire podcaster / comedian, spit in someone's face and then threw them through a sliding glass door because they asked him to stop eating his food. Look into it. I guess Noon's really forgotten, but Roman Polanski's still getting awards and standing ovations for his films. Mark Wahlberg beat and blinded a Vietnamese guy just because he was Vietnamese. Newt Gingrich, Republican politician, married his high school geometry teacher when he was 19 and she was 26, had multiple affairs, and while she was in the hospital undergoing treatment for cancer, he came into her hospital room and told her he was divorcing her. Friends of Gingrich report that Newt told them that she wasn't pretty enough to be the wife of a president, which he planned to be. He proceeds to divorce her, and then doesn't pay child support, and first wife has to get help from the church to make ends meet. I say first wife, because he gets his divorce and in 6 months marries his second wife. But while with second wife has an affair with his staffer. During this affair, the massive hypocrite leads the impeachment proceedings of Bill Clinton for lying about an affair, gets divorced, and 4 months later marries his latest wife. He also blamed past infidelities on his passion for this country. Oh, and he is credited with driving a wedge between the parties in politics and being a leader in Christian family values. You can currently find him as a popular pundit on news programs. I think you all know the song Despacito, who is performed by Luis Fonsi. Well, this little piece of a shoot was married to a beautiful woman who had breast cancer. During her entire process of chemo, he wasn't there, and he even told her, when she had a breast removed, that he didn't want her as a woman. This ended up in a divorce. Everyone's celebrity hero Bill Murray allegedly beat his wife repeatedly, up until his wife divorced him in 2007. James Franco tried to meet a 17-year-old girl in a hotel through Instagram. He was in his 30s when this happened. Natalie Wood was probably murdered by Robert Wagner and witnessed by Christopher Walken. Marcos Alonso, football player for Chelsea FC, was driving drunk and killed a 22-year-old woman, driving 70 miles per hour in a 30 miles per hour zone with an alcohol level of 0.93 milligrams. His final punishment was a $67,000 fine and a driving ban of 40 months. Ben Roethlisberger. Everyone somehow forgets that he sexually assaulted 2 people. Gordon Ramsay slapped on 2 pieces of bread and made the poor girl call herself an idiot sandwich. Roman Polanski sexually assaulted a teenager and Hollywood still defends him. Cardi B bragged about drugging people. Jimmy Savile, for those unaware, huge TV and radio star in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, still popped up now and again until he died in 2011. After he died, massive allegations about him came out, the vast majority of which were proven to be true. Abused and sexually assaulted multiple children, both sexes, many ages, while working on TV shows, etc., but also was known as a charity man who did actually raise millions for children's hospitals, etc., but it was just a cover to gain access. He even had keys and an official advisory position at Broadmoor, a high-security psychiatric hospital in the UK, which allowed him to abuse and sexually assault patients at will, unproven. But he's also had connections with children's homes where kids went missing, quite possibly murdered. What is staggering about this is that it was known and often talked about while he was alive. He even makes admissions in his autobiographies. People took him to task over it. He was even questioned by police multiple times, but he managed to get away with it. Still astounding looking back. And there were massive investigations into everything from the BBC to the NHS after he died.